Welcome to another episode of the Reboot Chronicles, a no-holds-barred forum with global leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs about how organizations stay focused on growth and innovation in unprecedented times. I'm your host, Dean Tobias, coming to you live from Reviv's North American headquarters in Chicago, and we would like to thank you for joining us from around the globe today.
I'd like to welcome Aurelian Lis to the program today. He's the CEO of Dermalogica, the world's top professional-grade skincare brand. It was founded by Jane and Raymond back in the 80s and was acquired by Unilever in 2015. The company has become a global brand since then, sold in over 80 countries now through over 100,000 skincare professionals. We'll talk about that in a minute. And I think we call it you call it your tribe, really, which is kind of interesting. Thanks for joining us today from, I think you're out on the West Coast still?
Yes, I'm in Venice Beach. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Of course, looks like you're in the office too. That's a good sign.
It's a home office. I've kitted it out to make it look like a spaceship. I'm not sure it really works, but there we go.
Yeah, it looks good. Even though you're owned by the Unilever mothership, as we call it, you're still pretty much operating as independent company, independent CEO. And I'm just curious, have you stayed true to a lot of the things that the principles that kind of Jane and company founded this on, personalization, education, human touch? I'm curious about that, but maybe just to start out, give us the rundown. What is Dermalogica today around the globe?
You mean the size? Yeah, we're a decent sized professional skincare company, about 1,200 direct employees, and when we sort of look at the others, we're about 5,000 people, and as you said, the tribe. Business in pretty much 88 countries, about 50% salon, 50% direct to consumer, retail, and those sort of areas.
Wow, that's a nice mix.
It is a good mix, actually. It's our heritage is the treatment salon, is the salons, and is actually skin treatments, and that's what's so exciting. The question about are we true to the past is. Yeah. I think as a CEO, you can come in and you can change some things, but the thing you can't change in a company is the DNA. The DNA was there from the day it was founded, how it was created, and in our case, it was created by Jane and Raymond, and they created a school, right? And it's called the International Dermal Institute. It was 1983, and it taught skin treatment. So basically, you were a therapist, you were a licensed therapist, of which there were very few in the US at that time. Right. And you got to know how to do treatments better. And that school was all we did until 3 years later when we created Dermalogica brand to go with the teaching. So it's quite interesting to sort of be in a company, I've got about a 25-year history in this industry, which is very, very different. And that's because we actually teach treatments.
Right. So was it a husband and wife duo team? Yeah. Is that how it started?
They came over together.
That's amazing.
He's South African. She's.
You don't hear that. You don't hear those stories that much, or if you do, they don't end well.
No, they end beautifully well. This one. Oh, no.
And is Jane still involved?
They're still both involved. Yeah.
Jane, that's great.
It's great to have the founder because especially when we like to start with for guidance. If somebody there's a CEO to talk to. But also Jane's been instrumental because she's such a visionary that she's really helpful in moving the company forward now. And so, like as a CEO and as a founder, you set the path for the company, and people then want to stick to that path. The beauty about it is if you're the founder and you set it, you can also change the path. Right. So Jane's actually been really helpful over the last years when we wanted to move forward, put it into the company into a different gear. She would actually be there, and because she's going on the new path. Yep. It gives permission to all those other people who've been following her for years to say, you know what, this is a good future for us as well.
Yeah, sounds like a perfect partnership. I mean, you are on the Reboot Chronicles, so as a CEO, you kind of come in and reboot certain things, and so I'm sure you've had to figure that out. And especially when you're owned by a mothership, scale. It's all about scale and growth. Seems like you've done that.
It is about scale, growth, and profitability, and the sort of the things. But at the same time, it's also good about the ethics of what we do to make sure, which we've always been good. But we've upped our sustainability agenda, for example, which is hugely important now, and that's one actually out of all the things that the mothership has given us is the experts in sustainability, so that we could quickly flip to better packaging, more recyclability, more biodegradability, better sustainably sourcing. And that's actually the best thing for me from the mothership. The other thing that I'm very lucky of is, and very privileged to be, is that I got all the resources of a big company, but as an organization, as a CEO, we get to choose what our destination is, and we're in charge of it, and we have to deliver it.
Yeah.
And that's good, because I don't know if you've worked with big organizations as well. They have a lot of advantages, but they can be quite heavy on people. And
yeah, I've been in your exact shoes. I was another left coast company. This one was in San Francisco, but owned by AT&T. So that was a real tough mothership. So I felt that most of my job was just to serve and protect the employees from the influence of the East Coast. So it's good. You're in LA. You can keep that culture going. Many companies don't. I mean, this is years later. So it's a great story. And you've gone through 2020 with COVID, and let's kind of look out in 21, 22. But from a lockdown point of view, what have been some of the most impactful things that the team has learned, and maybe the tribe too, going through what everyone went through in a global pandemic lockdown, especially with services and salons, and where you cater to. Even one of your big partners, Ulta. I mean, there was a lot of switching behavior, but really interested in. That's all kind of in the past. Some people don't want to talk about it as much, but how has it really influenced you? What big shifts are you seeing for the next couple of years now?
So I think the first thing that we've realized, again, you double down on your roots, right? And in terms of education, the beginning of the pandemic as well, there was all the stuff that we had to change, the new ways of working and all that, which everybody faced. But we also had, we have 20,000 salons worldwide that just literally couldn't operate anymore. They do skin treatments, and then suddenly everybody's going around saying no touch, no touch. I mean, how do you do a skin touch treatment without touching people? So we spent a lot of effort, and we realized that we brought in some experts, epidemiologists, to do what we call clean touch. So say, no, there is a way that you can touch people, and this is the way. You don't just wear a mask, you wear a mask and a shield, for example. And we put these principles together. And the amazing thing that we saw then was we created a class the way we do. We opened it to the industry. We thought we'd get a couple of thousand people. We ended up getting, at this point, we've had 60,000 people take our class.
I heard that. I thought it was a typo. That is amazing.
So 60,000 therapists and makeup artists. And it's like, the pride I have with that actually is like when it happened to be on my birthday, I saw a small local newspaper in the UK, and there's a picture of a therapist in Saffron Walden, and she's holding up her clean touch certificate as in their local newspaper saying, look, I'm open, I'm safe, I know how to do this, and I've got my certification here from Dermalogica to do it. And you suddenly realize, for me, maybe it was obvious, but for me, it was like thinking, my God, we can really move an industry, not just clients, not just, and peripheral industries as well, like makeup artistry. And I think that's something that's going to continue for what we do. So we've been looking at, and I was thinking, our mission in terms of professional skill development has to be bigger than just, the exact very, very limited skills that maybe we teach. And so, for example, we branched out into things that, one of the latest classes we've just put out there is to help therapists and other people, massage therapists and hairdressers to counsel their patients better. So how do you, because everybody's in a sort of low grade depression at the moment, as you often hear. And so we've got a class basically run by really professionals out of Berkeley. And we teach, okay, how do you listen properly? How do you, be attentive? What do you do when somebody comes in to have just a cry on your shoulder? Right. And, I think that's I see more of that in the future.
And they're also used to talking a lot, either to their, their dermatologist or their makeup artist or their, just their stylist. I mean, my stylist loves to talk all the time. I'm like, I don't think we're supposed to be talking that much right now. She's like, we have masks on, it's fine. I'm like, okay, just no singing though.
It's particularly true if somebody's touching you, right? Because there's a very intimate connection when that human touch and you've got somebody's touching your face. It doesn't happen very much. And it is such an important part of what we do, and actually separates us a bit from some of the other med spas and others in the industry. But it's in order, and that releases sort of hormones, which sort of get people in the right mood. But it also means that there's that deep connection, and that's why people want to chat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is interesting. Do you guys always charge for your classes, or are some of them included with?
The industry ones, no, don't want to. It's. I mean, I do. It's not completely philanthropic in the way that I like people to know that Dermalogica is able to bring these high quality classes. But otherwise, yes, I want everybody to be successful. I want this industry back on its feet. We need to have people understanding how to do professional services, clean services, even during pandemics and beyond, and because it's so important for the industry. So no, we wouldn't charge for that. We're happy to do it for everybody for free.
Yeah, and I like your thoughts about kind of the cross-training in other industries. Massage therapists, they're not getting a lot of coaching, and you mentioned the UK. I mean, they have been really strict about opening up salons, and there's been a lot of fighting going on over there. Whereas right now, I happen to be on site in Colorado, not in Chicago, and they opened up really early. I remember getting a haircut in April or something. Whereas in other countries, it's been so. Their businesses are not coming back as much. Are you seeing? Have you seen a downturn in the number of businesses reopening, or are most of them still coming back? And you've got a big network. Did you say 10,000?
No, globally more like 20,000.
That's a big.
At the beginning, I was worried that we would lose a lot. Yeah. Very, very worried, obviously, because it was such dire times for them. The most positive thing that trend I've seen recently is that it feels like we have, there is some churn, but maybe 10, 15% churn, as in accounts, who decide to close for personal reasons, for economic reasons.
Yep.
So, but we haven't seen a pickup. We haven't really seen that more accounts are going bust. What we're seeing is that the accounts are definitely doing fewer treatments and therefore needing fewer supplies and things like that. But it's interesting that we're not seeing as many go bankrupt, which for me is very positive, and I think is because these individual entrepreneurs who make up the heart of our industry, they pivoted, they rebooted, right? Yep. And whether it's through affiliate programs that we were offering, all these other things, right. Starting to do more things at distance, they actually moved. And it's actually some of the bigger players in the industry who've had a harder time, because the bigger players are waiting often for somebody on a higher up level to say, hey, it's okay to do. Okay, where do I go now? Yeah. And that person's too busy maybe with other things.
Plus, they have overhead. Some of them are just like 4 or 5 practice locations, and they're a group of doctors, and they happen to do estheticians too. And interesting. How do you balance, B2B versus consumer in terms of your company, your culture? You're doing both. Most companies don't pull that off very well. It seems like you have a great partnership with Ulta, and I think it's Sephora, the other one that you're doing retail.
Sephora, but David Jones, Mecca in Australia, Vitas in Norway, nice. Sorbet down in South Africa. So, so we have a lot of clients around the world. Yeah, look, that's an interesting balance. So, my philosophy has always been one of divide the businesses up into units, put people in charge of those individual units, give them good guardrails so that we know where we're going, and let trust them to get on with it.
Right.
And I think.
And do you have products that, like, you sell a lot of pro products, like a Wella sells, through salons, but they can't really sell at retail, but it still ends up getting sold through retail in some cases. Do you have certain products that you can't sell through retail, or you just don't want to?
We do. Definitely. Yeah, a very simple number. We've got about 100 formulae in bearing aside, we're about more than 200 SKUs, but let's say 100 different, products, so to speak. I'd say, something like 60 of those are retail. And then another 40 are professional only, but in the professional, so the professional has the whole 100 different products. Yep. And in retail, we'd only have about 60. So it's a smaller range, yeah.
So the Revive Health and Beauty Wellness Index, as we've talked about before, like really spiked, like most industries did, with e-commerce just accelerating like crazy. And most people think it's not a blip, but since you have two categories, makeup and skincare, it's like makeup was down for a long time. Do you see it, trending back up now versus skincare? Obviously went through the roof. People weren't going out and dressing up as much, and so just curious how that looks from your lens in terms of the questions really about the future of skincare, but just, kind of getting through this blip. Are people now more focused on, the health and integrity of these beauty products because of what we went through in 2020?
I think people, some of these trends have been in the market anyway beforehand, right? Yes. And I think there was, I happened to be associated with a very fast-growing makeup brand beforehand. It was very pink.
Yes, it was.
And we rode to a certain extent the Instagram wave of which was very showy. You could see it was very, very visual, and obviously that sentiment had changed. But I think that sentiment even started changing before COVID, and this move to clinical skincare, I think, is very much one of people excited about the technology. I think realizing as well that that the natural there's lots of natural products, but not that the natural products maybe sort of don't always deliver alone what you want, and that it's really about having clean products and products that are sort of healthy for you, and maybe being a bit sort of less restrictive on saying that they have to definitely have a natural background. And so, but the performance of them has been important. And so as you continue to move forward, that's what we see. People want products that work. And so when we put out, if we're going to put out a product which is against age spots, it has to remove age spots, right? Some of our acne products as well, you have to see an improvement on acne. And one of our products last year, for example, there was a retinol acne product. As sort of before and afters were so fabulous that, that's what carries it. I think there's an increasing number of, a higher expectation of good clinical results, and that those clinical results can be demonstrated. And maybe it's because people have more time to research, and to a certain extent, when you went to a store and retail store, and you spoke to somebody or just looked at the box, you had a fair amount of information, but it's the person helping you probably didn't know everything there was to know about the 20,000 products in that store. Now, when you're in the internet and you're deeply researching one product, you are coming across pretty deep information on that one product. And so maybe, the consumer is becoming more knowledgeable.
Yeah, some of them. Yeah, so that kind of leads to one of our favorite topics is not just about this category, but about any category, but just personalization of shopping. Personally, a big piece of that can be educational. Usually it's like, with technologies, like Revive, where you're kind of like taking the funnel of 10,000 SKUs and saying, hey, these are the 10 or 20 that your skin type needs or your profile matches. Or so very interested in your thoughts on the future of personalization. First of all, what you guys are doing, how do you actually help your customers deliver more personalization? I guess is a great place to start. And then maybe we shift to, what's the future look like? I think
there's two aspects of this which are really important for me. One of them is, what you're going to do, which sort of whether it's what we call face mapping or chats or widgets. So I can tell you what we do there. But I think the other thing which is very interesting is how do you actually have this happen and be relevant to your clients? And I think often with these developments like personalization, and the innovation comes to us from Silicon Valley, from Silicon Beach, from all these places, and it's great. But sometimes the innovation's ahead and is looking for a solution. So one of the biggest challenges actually that we have at Dermalogica is thinking about looking at the world and saying, oh, there's these wonderful technologies, but how can I make them relevant for my business model or for my consumer?
Right.
And I think a lot of people are spending a bit too much time on this is a flashy new toy, let me talk about it, and not enough time of thinking about, am I actually plugging it in my system, which makes really fundamental change. one of the toys, but it started as a toy, but now it's a fundamental system that we did, is a digitized version of face mapping. And so the actual, there's two ways to see this. The actual tool itself is, you go to facemapping.me, for example, as a consumer. We take a bunch of photos, we use a whole host of skin analysis, and we can recommend some good product, which is very, very personalized for you and suitable for your skin, give you some results on your skin, as well as some services, and tell you where to go get a good service. So that is one thing, and there's obviously the digitized version of it. The interesting thing about it is that actually, most people don't wake up in the morning and just think, hey, I wonder what product I should buy. People wake up in the morning thinking, I've got something on my cheek. What should I do about it?
What the hell is that?
I can talk about it, right?
Exactly.
So so for me, face mapping is actually more integral to what we've done, and it's always been the way that we speak. It's the way that our professional skin therapist experts speak to somebody, and basically it's sort of like their prescription pad, what they see and what they recommend. And so we've sort of the first versions of our face mapping digital tool were very much about upload a photo and here's your results.
Right.
The later versions are very, very much more about how do you chat with a real expert, a real professional skincare therapist, licensed, not a bot, not a sales agent. How do you get that real expertise? And that's actually a bit more motivating. And the technology is actually exactly the same as it was before.
Right.
But it's like it's the way you frame it. And are you answering somebody's question, or are you trying to sell a solution? And that for us is really, really important. And is one of the ways we then personalize, because the personalization comes by the expert saying, this is what you need, and this isn't what you need. And the AI and the tools help with those algorithms. Because we can learn through them, and they suggest that, right, and we can see if it works. But that's part of it. And then the personalization, I think, also comes one step further, because once you get a product, that product can be personalized. Now, most products, you squeeze the tube, you put it on your face, right? But we actually, with every launch, we do what we call them widgets. I used to call them atomic API widgets, and everybody's eyes rolled. And they're like, "What's he on?"
I like that one.
And atomic, because they were like, I studied physics, so whatever. And they're usually APIs, that's why. But the idea behind these widgets is it's a piece of functionality that's useful to the consumer when we do a launch. And so for example, with a recent launch which is Hydro Mask Exfoliant, which is an exfoliant with these small spheres. It was it was a functionality which would say where should you exfoliate the spheres more than another place. For some other products we've done over time, it's a ritual depending on what we see on your face of how you would massage that product into the skin.
Right.
And it's we even use sentiment analysis in some of our widgets, where depending on what we see, we suggest sort of different pressure points. And it's an interesting way, I think, because personalization is not just the product, it's also the service and the way you apply it. And so I think, we've tried to use technology as much as possible to take that one level further.
Yeah, brilliant. It makes me think of another thing that cross industry, whether it's food, health, beauty, wellness, but the personalization of the product itself. So there's a few, I'll still call them startups, that are working on that. So they'll be, rather than having 1,000 SKUs, you have unlimited because you're personalizing it. Having talked to a couple of the CEOs and their investors on these, haven't interviewed any on the show yet, but it doesn't seem very scalable to me. The big brands scoff at it, but do you see us going there? Whether it's hair or food or makeup or whatever, just pick a category, whatever's easy.
I got a bit of history in personalized skincare because
I know that's why I'm asking you.
I founded the product, Prescribed Solutions Customized Skincare back in 2002 with a business partner, David May, together, and then we built that company for many years, and then sold it to Ferndale Labs, a biopharma out of Michigan. The scalability was the difficult thing, and also not just the scalability came from not just because you had to work out how you could deliver the product. In our cases, we had boosters that you could add to products, and there were a huge number of combinations. But also the problem is that once you start having such a wide array, like the customer, and this time in case the patient, because it was all sold through doctors, they could no longer just go up and say, I want that product. They needed somebody to say which one it was, and that impeded the sale.
Secret decoder ring or something. I know
exactly. So I think the problem is scalability. Now, we've got some pretty, like, I can't tell you the exact things we are doing, but I can guarantee you that by July this year, you'll see products for us in terms of scalable personalization, because we've got basically building more intelligence into the product, where I don't need an expert to adapt the product, but the skincare adapts itself on your skin.
Exactly.
And it's a bit more intelligent, and it's using, it can read markers more than others. And so I do see that. So so it's interesting, right? And I think people always say they want customized products, but in the end, they only want customized if they have an expert to tell them exactly what they want. Otherwise, they're actually much more happy. In my view, they're happier not customized products.
Yeah, and it's different. 2022 here, coming up. It's like the technology has gotten better. You've got different types of AI things like Revive that can help you, recommend things. We're just pick an industry. You can actually the diagnosis doesn't have to be in person, so that helps. And you just got to figure out how to scale it operationally. So that's good insight. And it kind of leads me to what everyone loves to talk about on the show, is just how do you handle growth and innovation? You've got the perfect setting because you've got a mothership, you've got yourself. Do you believe in like partnering and working with a lot of tech vendors? Are you guys mostly science based? I mean, you've just announced a couple new products that are pretty cutting edge. I mean, it doesn't really, you don't hear it in consumer news, I'm sure, but it seems like you're very, very science based in innovation. But just curious, how do you approach growth and innovation?
Well, I mean, growth and innovation is like sort of a sweeping topic for me, and we think about, like, I come back to the heritage of the site, of the business. It's expertise and developing skills so people can take care of their future, right? So the therapists who work with us are in charge of a beautiful future. But at the same time, I think for me as well, it's also about the digital skills and the digital fluency of my employees, and the technical advances and innovation has to come there. So I see innovation, yes, in the product sense, and we're definitely using cutting edge technology. We work with some incredible suppliers. We've got a parent company and a research and development lab, which is massive and awesome. But I also actually would take it one step further, that I need digital innovation and clever innovation in everything we do. So whether it's we use robotic process automation in terms of the way we process some of our shipments for finance. That's the way I want people to think about it. We'll, in many different areas, we'll try and sort of find, another good example, we use virtual reality in a way to visualize which promotions are working best and which promotions aren't. When you're sort of talking about, you've got 6,000 clients, for example, in the US, in terms of salons, and then you've got all these different promotions happening all the time. You want to understand, well, who's actually doing it. And to visualize that, we work with a Silicon Beach VR company. So for me, like, the innovation has to come into the company,
right?
In every discipline, and we have these what we call the guiding principles, and that's one of them. And then, what we find then is that the innovation is often from very small companies that bring it to us. It's companies, or smaller companies, put it that way, and they're quite focused on one area. And so the interesting thing for me is that, traditionally big companies, would only work with big suppliers. And the problem with those big suppliers is they don't have the innovation, because the people who are innovating are only innovating in the small part, right? So the sort of typical example is Salesforce can do some interesting things, and they continue to advance, and whether it's on their commerce cloud or something like that, and personalization on their commerce cloud for DTC, they do it, give it a nice name, Einstein, some sort of philosopher, and they do it. But is it really cutting edge in the way? Well, actually, we use something called Intellimise, which uses machine learning to microsegment and then deliver a personalized experience on our website And that's all they do. And it's
exactly.
So for me, so start with, you've got the innovation. You realize that innovation comes from these small cuts, which means that you have to change the way you work so that you make yourself open to the ecosystem of innovation. And for us, that's meant things like on the DTC side, we've moved over to Shopify because that is an ecosystem which is open. When the way we scale our ERP is also, we've pulled things out of the ERP that everybody else would do
most people don't throw innovation into that category, but it's good you do.
No, but if you start pulling things out of the ERP and doing it separately, then you suddenly have the opportunity to flick on a switch with one of these bright entrepreneurs who will show you how you can do 2-hour delivery and get the whole thing running in 6 weeks.
Yeah, we call it dancing with startups, and since you were once one, you're doing it right. Yeah. Aurelian, we really want to thank you for joining us today. It'd be fun to get kind of a parting story from you, maybe a personal challenge that you've faced in the past that our viewers always get a inspirational kick out of that. Most people go 2 or 3 jobs back on this question versus current events, but no, just words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom. I think I think a while back, and obviously, I was in a startup. It became a decent company, but then I went to a company which was, Benefit, which was much, much, much larger. And, this was this really interesting thing that happened for me was like, I had been in a role where I had to run everything. Yeah. And, as a founder, if you don't have an opinion on something, it's not going to happen in your company. And, your customer's not going to like it. It's not going to work. You do bring it, you've got your team and all that, but so much of your work is like being involved in everything. You get to a company suddenly, which is doing $500 million in retail sales. you adopt the same approach. You're heading for disaster. So I think the sort of, one of the biggest things I learned is sort of this question about delegation. How do you delegate, and how do you choose what you get involved in?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, one of the biggest challenges was the flip from having to micromanage in certain areas to trying to make sure you're not micromanaging in all areas. And then maybe the ultimate is to sort of oscillate a bit with a bit of granularity and then come out again. So you're in control and you understand where the business is going. So when in my professional challenges, that was one of the biggest things that I sort of remember, and it's something I think about a lot at the moment when you're sort of.
It's easy to make fun of it, but not fun when you're going through it. That's a good one. Yeah. It's every stage is a different. You've got to really assess. And most people think delegating is just delegating, but choosing the right things that you're really good at, and then actually getting agreement on that from other people is always an interesting discussion.
And and delegating without guardrails
very different.
Is very, very wrong. That's not actual delegating. A proper delegation is like, this is the direction we want to go. Because if you put a good guardrail, like a limit on something, what we find is people stretch to that limit. Yep. And if you don't put a limit on it, they don't stretch. So actually, by putting limits, that's how you get your company to go faster. That's how you get them. You put a budget of $1 million, they spend $1 million. You don't put a budget, they actually only spend $500,000 because they thought they weren't allowed to spend the second. So that's the interesting part of that delegation. Yeah.
Good advice. Sounds like you're doing it well. You've been listening to the Reboot Chronicles with Dean Tobias here, Aurelian Lis, from the CEO of Dermalogica, has joined us today. And we want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Take care. Hope to see you soon. Maybe in person next time.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Cheers.